Hey, what's up guys, it's Glenn with DIY Creators, and today I'm making this mid-century modern accent table. Now, in my case, I'm temporarily using it as a TV stand in one of the bedrooms. If you're interested in making this exact table, all the measurements will be down in the video description. Since the top and the bottom is the largest surface of this build, I started by cutting the biggest pieces first, and whatever I had left over, that's what I used for the additional parts. And with the remaining pieces, I was able to cut out the back and also the two sides. So now to cut the sides, I would say if you're using limited tools and you're using a circular saw to cut this, clamp the two together so you only cut once. The side should sit perfectly with the top, and the back piece sit between the two sides. We need to cut one more piece, and that's to support the drawer track, and I'm going to use the side as a guide. Once that's cut, it should fit perfectly with the sides. To build a drawer box, I use 1/2" sanded plywood. And to help keep the cost down, I'm using a wooden track, so I'm using some select pine from my scrap bin. And if you missed it, just remember all these measurements will be down in the video description. To construct the drawers, I'm using a rabbet joint, and I'm using my router to do it, but you can also use a handsaw. But only cut the rabbet in the face and the back of the drawer, not the sides. Now cut out the bottom for the drawer. Learning from my past experience, I think it's better to sand the pieces down now before it's assembled, because not only will it make your life a lot easier, but you also get a better quality of sanding. In my case, I'm only using glue, so I put a good amount of glue right in the joints, right where I'm going to put the box together. Insert the bottom and then put the face on. Next, I'm using a strap clamp, and you can also use regular clamps if that's what you have. And also check to make sure the squaring is good, and then on to the next step. So prepping this thing for paint, I'm using 220 grit sandpaper, and I sand everything, the sides, the top, the bottom, because I'm not thinking on which part's gonna be exposed. Just give it a good sand. The legs looked like they was already sanded when I got them, but they had a rough feel to it, so I just sand them again anyways to make it even smoother. And these can be purchased from Amazon, which I have links down in the bottom. So now everything has been sanded and it's ready for a coat of finish. This is all the pieces that we need to build this entire piece. I temporarily attached the legs to a piece of wood so I can easily move it once I'm done painting it and get it out of my way. I taped off the hardware so I didn't get any paint on them, and somehow I still managed to get a little bit of paint on them, but you can always remove the paint, not a big deal. Now to paint the leg, I'm using a black semi-gloss spray paint from Rust-Oleum, and you can pick that up at your local hardware store. I applied 3 light coats, and if you do the same thing, you should not have any drips. And while cutting out the dado track, I had a blowout from the router bit right as I started cutting it. And the second pass around, I used painter's tape, which gave me a much better results. And this track is for the drawer slides. If you don't want to do this, you can also go pick up some hardware and it will work just fine as well. Now to assemble the table, I started by putting the two sides on first, just holding those with clamps so I can use those as a stop while I install the back. Now the back had a slight curve to it, which gave me a little bit of a hassle, so I used a good amount of clamps while I hammer and bend the wood back into place. I used a couple brad nails from underneath as well for reassurance. And to attach the side, I also glued that, and then I shot a couple brad nails into that as well. Now repeat the same thing on the opposite side. And now to install the drawer support, I use my speed square to help me line this up, use the clamp to hold it in place, and also use the speed square again to help me as a guide where to shoot the nails in from the bottom. I made some quick spacers to give me that elevation for the box, and I put the tracks in, but I want the tracks forward so that when I push the door closed, the door actually stop on the track. And now use the combination square as a guide to keep the track consistent all the way around. And now to install the drawer front, I want to make sure this piece sits center inside that opening, and the best way for me to do that was using some mending plate as a spacer, and that got it pretty close. And the next thing to do is to clamp the door onto the drawer, and then install a couple screws at the top and then a couple underneath. It's almost time to put the top on. Apply some wood glue and then spread it all over. And next, drop the top in place. If you're wondering, why do I have that clamp right there in the center of the screen? Well, I'm guessing when I was nailing the back, maybe it went out of square a little bit. So I put the clamp in place so I can press down on it as I shoot a nail through, and now it's straight. The majority of this box is held together with glue, but in some key places, I do have some brad nails in it to keep things aligned while I have the clamp holding it in place. Personally, I like to install all my hardware in the rough stages of my project, and I do this because if I make a mistake, there's no better time to fix it than now. Now, prior to applying the paint, I've patched all the nail holes and I sand that down, and now it's time to paint. Now, this piece of furniture is the temporary piece for one of my bedrooms. If I were keeping it long term, I would use edge banding to give it a much cleaner look on the edges. I'm using a hand Phillips screwdriver to install the screws, and I don't like to use a drill in this case because the bits usually jump out of the Phillips head and you can damage your work surface that way. So as we get close to that finished product, I had one more thing to do, fill this area in, and I couldn't figure out, do I paint it white, do I paint it black? But once I took a step back, black made all the sense in the world to me. Now, I could have used a tape measure to find the center of this box, but everyone's not good with a tape measure, so whenever I get a chance, I'm going to throw a tip at you guys that can make your life a little easier. So what I did was took a string and crossed it diagonal, and wherever that center meet up at, that is your center, and I checked it with my tape measure and it was dead on. When drilling the hole for your pull handle, hold a piece of wood in place, drill the hole, and that would prevent you from having a blowout. Normally I would have put this handle in before putting on the paint, but I couldn't figure out if I like this handle. Now, as I stated before, this piece is only temporarily. I made it so that it can make the room look a little more presentable. I'm using it as a TV stand, and right in the back of it I cut a 1.5 inch hole so I can pass the cable through. Home is where the heart is, and I hope you guys was able to take something from this video, whether it was a build, a tip, a trick, anything that can help you make your life a lot easier going forward. And guys, thanks for watching my videos. Definitely smash that like button if you guys thought this was helpful to you, and also if you have any comments, drop them down below. Until next time, guys, oh yeah, and don't forget to please share this with your friends, family, and get everyone over to this page next time, guys. Peace.